Based on a true story, a desperate father, engineer Bill Markham, embarks on a dangerous journey through the Amazon's wilderness in search of his son Tommy. However, the savage truth about Tommy's disappearance challenges Bill's resolve to save his son and the family he's known from the brink of extinction. While moving in on a busy afternoon in Brazil, Jean Markham grabs her adventurous son, Tommy, to enter their new apartment building with her daughter Heather. As they settle in, engineer Bill Markham points to his office and his work site in the forest while his son looks through binoculars. Soon, the Markham family drives to Bill's work in the forest, where a construction team clears the area to make way for the dam and residential project. The engineer watches the bulldozers deforest the site with his children, exposing them to the nature of his work. Later that day, Jean sets a picnic near the construction zone while Tommy curiously follows a trail of ants. As the boy wanders further into the forest, a group of tribesmen faces and smiles at him. Hurriedly, Tommy returns to his family and tells Bill about the smiling strangers. Jean thinks her son merely wants to play with his father, so Bill eagerly follows him. However, Tommy fails to introduce his father to the smiling people, unaware that the tribesmen conceal their presence among the leaves. So Bill returns to the river instead, thinking his son is following him behind. When the boy doesn't respond to his father's calls, Bill retraces his steps when a tribal arrow shoots and misses him, confirming Tommy's claims. Thinking his son is in danger, Bill frantically tells Jean to get help from the construction men while he pursues the jungle. Moments after, Bill realizes their desperate search might render them hopeless amidst the vast and unforgiving forest. 10 years later, the construction of the engineer's dam nears its completion, but still without signs of his beloved son. In a charitable institution, Bill brings journalist Uwe Werner to cover Brazil's abandoned children. Jean has volunteered in similar institutions since Tommy's disappearance, hoping someone is taking care of her lost son similarly. At her house, Jean thanks Uwe's editor for publishing their tragedy, which helped collate information about Amazonian tribes, aiding their search. She shows him the updated map of the forest, while Bill prepares for his expedition with Uwe. The apathetic journalist believes the sorrowful mother wishes Tommy is dead to ease their worries, but Jean fervently disagrees. Soon after, Bill and Uwe cross the Amazon River on a boat to start their expedition, warning the journalist about his insensitive jokes about the lost boy. As they arrive, a foreign missionary, Father Leduc, welcomes the engineer and his companion. He shows them the boat, which they'll use before leading them to the Indians who will navigate their way. In their native tongue, Bill converses with the Indian holding the arrow from before. The native identifies it as belonging to the tribe called Invisible People, who hunt along the river but haven't been seen even by locals. Meanwhile, in the deep jungle, a much older Tommy, adopted by the Invisible People, learns hunting from the chieftain Wanadi. The pair cross the swamp on their boat and climb the mountain, eyeing their faraway home. Suddenly, a toucan caws, insinuating that danger is near. Just as expected, the duo sees the cannibalistic tribe called the Fierce People, so they hide among the leaves. Concurrently, Bill and Uwe traverse the swamp on their motorboat. Upon seeing the cannibalistic tribe, Tommy and Wanadi return to their village. The chieftain, whom they call Father, announces that a war against the Fierce People is near and orders the warriors to prepare and keep watch. Moments later, Tommy and his friend Mappy are swimming by the waterfalls when they see the women hunting fish. Smitten by his crush, Kachiri, Tommy teases her when the tribesmen approach them. Wanadi recognizes that Tommy is entering adulthood, seeing the lad taking an interest in women, so he declares that his adolescence must die. Shortly after, Wanadi initiates his son's rite of passage at the lake, where Tommy endures being bitten by a swarm of red ants. Afterward, Tommy resurfaces from the water, reborn as a man. Elsewhere, Bill and Uwe cross the river near the waterfalls, where they see a fish trap, signifying a tribe has gone there. As the two set camp nearby, Bill hangs their metal belongings on the river to alert them of people through the water's disturbance. At the village, the tribesmen cover Tommy in traditional green chalk. As part of his initiation, Tommy inhales a green powder, allowing him to enter a dreamlike state, revealing his spirit animal, a falcon. When Tommy comes to his senses, he claims to see the sacred stones in the waterfalls, where the Invisible People initially lived before the cannibalistic tribe drove them away. Wanadi reveals the ancient stones are their foundation as Invisible People, whose green powder conceals them through the forest. Since only a few are left, Tommy volunteers to gather more of the sacred stones at the waterfalls. The following day, the newly proclaimed adult courts Kachiri by by the stream. Tommy swears to find the sacred stones, but the woman mocks his courage, so he immediately embarks on his mission to prove her wrong. At Bill and Ue's camp, the pair light their fireworks to attract the tribesmen's attention. Consequently, the fierce people arrive, whom Bill approaches, oblivious of their savage nature. The following morning, Ue eagerly documents the tribe while they lead the two to their village. Arriving at the fierce people's settlement, Bill shows their chieftain, Jakare, the invisible people's arrow. The savage leader laughs, saying their enemies are good meat, and threatens to eat the foreigners too. Realizing they're in great danger, Bill shoots the charging man, who passes away instantly, so Jakare stops his men from attacking the armed foreigner. Curious about the fatal weapon, the chieftain takes the bullet from the dead man's wound and tastes it. Acknowledging Bill's bloodlust, he gives the engineer a head start before they hunt him at dawn. However, the vicious tribe takes Ue and feasts on him. Bill takes advantage and escapes through the dark, firing at his pursuers simultaneously. When dawn arrives, Jakare leads his men to hunt the armed foreigner. Meanwhile, Tommy successfully reaches the waterfalls under the fierce people's territory. As Bill cautiously navigates his way, an arrow hits his back, so he abandons his bag and rolls down to the waterfalls. At the same time, Tommy retrieves a stone at the foot of the falls. Suddenly, he hears Bill nearby, so he hides as the stranger fires at his surroundings. Tommy aims his arrow at the wounded man, who trudges toward him with his gun. However, Tommy hesitates as he recognizes the familiar face of his father. Instead, he shoots at the savage, aiming at Bill. As Bill realizes his long-lost son is facing him, an arrow pierces his arm, so Tommy immediately kills the perpetrator. Just in time, the fierce people catch up with the pair, so Bill fires his remaining bullets at them. The father and son escape through the path between the rocks and down the waterfalls while the savages retrieve the engineer's carbine. When they distance themselves from the fierce people's territory, Tommy says they should return to his father, Wanadi, which Bill contests. Since the young man has lived most of his years with the invisible people, he claims that Bill only exists in his dreams, not in the reality he has come to know. As they swim ashore, Bill asks his son if he remembers his mother and leans on Tommy. Meanwhile, the fierce people's leader supplies wood chunks in Bill's carbine, celebrating their new weapon. Soon after, Tommy coos for his brothers while carrying his wounded father. Wanadi welcomes his proud son, who fiercely encounter their tribal enemy. Wanadi worries about the upcoming chaos, eyeing Tommy's materialized dream. Later, the chieftain's wife, Uluru, reports that Bill has a fever, pleading with Wanadi to cure the dying man. The chief healer hears their pleas and derives the evil within the convulsing man. When Bill awakens that night, he asks Wanadi why he took Tommy from him years ago. The elderly man reveals he refused to return the smiling boy to his unhappy family who destroys the forest, referring to them as termites. The following day, Tommy takes Wanadi's staff and rushes to Kuchiri's family. He chooses Kuchiri as his wife and offers the sacred stones as dowry to the woman's father. Gaining the man's approval, Tommy grabs Kuchiri and knocks her out with his staff as a marriage rite. Meanwhile, Jakare shows Bill's carbine to unlawful trader Shaki Brothel, asking for the destructive weapon's ammunition in exchange for their hunt. However, the trader declines their offer, asking for women to sell instead. Deep into the forest, Kachiri regains consciousness as Tommy settles her on the ground, beginning their life as lovers. When Bill awakens fully healed, a tribeswoman, Kaya, explains Tommy and Kachiri's betrothment, thinking the foreigner wants her the same way. Then, Kaya invites him to bathe by the river, where she tends to his wound. Concurrently, Wanadi announces they have prepared their fresh war paint from the sacred stones, marking them on Tommy's body. Bill intervenes, asking his son to return with him to his birth mother. However, Kachiri proclaims she is now Tommy's only woman, infuriating Bill. He confronts Wanadi for stealing his only son, but unlike him, Tommy is free from resentment, claiming his home and future are with the invisible people. Despite the engineer's despair for his son, Wanadi invites him to stay and celebrate the lovers. Nevertheless, Bill asks the chieftain to order Tommy and abide by his request, but Wanadi refuses to restrict his man's choice. Later that night, Tommy sits by his disheartened father, telling him him to be happy for him even after his long search. Bill sits beside the chieftain as the wedding presides, watching his only son's betrothal in amusement. Then, Bill claims he must return to his family, torn from leaving his son. Wanadi acknowledges the engineer's courage and gives him their sacred powder to guide him through the dangerous world beyond. As Bill falls into a dreamlike state, he envisions a jaguar, his spirit animal, while the tribesmen carry him back to the construction zone. When he regains consciousness, a worker recognizes him, oblivious of the invisible people who realize the destructive boundary is drawing near. Later that day, Jean comes home to her husband, realizing he discovered something on his expedition. On their way home, the invisible tribesmen see smoke from their village, insinuating danger. As they rush back, Mappy confirms that the fierce tribe has ransacked their home with destructive weapons and had taken their women. Seeing Uluru's lifeless body, Tommy bolts to attack the vicious tribe and retrieve his wife, but Wanadi insists they must honor their dead first. That night, the grieving tribe burns the corpses and pulverizes their remains. The warriors then ingest the ashes, honoring the perished tribesmen's memory. Meanwhile, the captured women struggle from the fierce tribe, leading them to the construction's clearing. The invisible tribe sets out to save their women, leaving them devastated upon seeing the deforested land surrounding the dam. The fierce tribe initially inhabited the area, but the flattened forest led them to trespass on other tribes' territories. Wanadi stops Tommy from crossing the barren land and pursuing their enemy since they can't conceal themselves without trees. Instead, the chieftain leads them through the edge as they shoot their arrows at an incoming bulldozer. Arriving at the illicit brothel, Jacare leads the invisible women to the traders in exchange for their weaponry. That night, the invisible warriors struggle to cross the barbed fence, so their watchman tries to climb the overhead line. However, the power line electrocutes the oblivious man, killing him instantly. Upon hearing the noise, the tribesmen retreat while the traders discover the dead native. The traffickers show the invisible people's arrow to Jacare, who settles on a pile of junk. The fierce tribe celebrates upon knowing their enemy has come. By the jungle's edge, Wanadi reconvenes with his men to plan their next steps. However, the fierce tribe shoots bullets at them, eventually wounding Wanadi. Tommy shoots Jacare and immediately retreats with his father and a few survivors. Further into the forest, Wanadi pleads with his men to set his soul free with their ancestors, leaving the fate of their tribe to Tommy. The new leader tells the survivors to carry on the former chieftain's will while he seeks his biological father's help. Afterward, Tommy pursues the construction's path with Mappy, witnessing the burning of their forest. When they reach the island's edge, they steal a boat and cross the river to the city. Soon, informal settlers chase the tribesmen with guns when a native, Carlos, recognizes the invisible warriors. Carlos helps the lost pair to hide and introduces himself and his companion, Paulo, as the Bat People, an endangered tribe who hunted at night. Because of the lack of sufficient information, Carlos cannot help Tommy search for Bill. Determined to save his tribe, Tommy inhales the sacred powder to retrieve his memories. In his vision, the falcon flies over his family's apartment building, showing him where he used to live. Soon after, Tommy arrives and climbs the building from outside, reaching his father's balcony. Shocked, Bill allows his son inside, who reunites with his mother at last. After Tommy informs Bill about the misfortunes of his tribe, the father drives the invisible people to the site. When Bill enters the brothel alone, he sees Kaya and the others, but the host, Costa, intercepts. Outside, Tommy, Mappy, and Paulo take out a guard and enter the vicinity. Meanwhile, Kaya informs her sisters to wait for the war cry while a man pulls Kachiri into the back rooms. Fortunately, Tommy sees his wife and hurriedly attacks her perpetrator. As he reunites with Kachiri, Tommy lets out a war cry, so the invisible women rush to escape. Hearing the signal, Bill knocks a traitor unconscious and steals his gun, allowing the others to escape. When Bill cautiously enters the hall, Costa aims at him, but a woman interferes, allowing the engineer to kill the traitor's leader. Concurrently, the fierce tribe pursues their enemy, preventing them from retreating into the forest. Then, Bill shoots Jacare, allowing the invisible people to escape. When morning comes, Tommy swears to carry his father's heroic deed, which saved their tribe from extinction. Bill warns his son about the dam and how invaders will ravage more land, which will steal the tribe's home. Defiant, Tommy claims they will summon torrential rain to destroy the dam, but the engineer doesn't believe nature's wrath can ruin the structure. As a farewell, Bill embraces his son for the last time and returns to the city. Afterward, the invisible tribe spends their waking days inciting frogs to croak for rain. Not long after, while Bill oversees the construction site through a storm, he hears the frogs croaking, which reminds him of Tommy's Tommy's words and warns him of heavy rain. Then, the engineer's colleagues inform him about the dam water exceeding the structure's safety levels. Determined to take advantage of the situation and save the invisible tribe, Bill claims he made a mistake and orders to evacuate the workers. Meanwhile, the tribesmen witness the incoming tide from the river and report it to Tommy. The new chieftain claims the river spirits have joined forces to destroy the destructive dam. As the construction workers evacuate the site, Bill sneaks into the dam and sets explosives along the walls. While he hesitates to detonate them, lightning strikes a crane and cuts the wires. Bill thinks his plan has failed, but then he witnesses the Great Flood burst the dam and obliterate the structure. True to Tommy's claims, the engineer watches in tears as his life's work falls into ruins, but acknowledges the salvation of the invisible tribe amidst the destruction. Into the deep forest, Tommy and Kachiri watch their tribe flourish in the stream, resuming their isolated life from civilization which nearly led to their demise.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.